we talked about the next measurement. The nurse is going to put the NAVA catheter in. We're going to plug that into our NAVA module cable, right? We go to neural positioning and we touch EDI catheter positioning, and you'll see there's nothing there, right? So let's go out of this, close that out, and you'll see I have a simulator running, so I try to make it as realistic as we can, putting this in, a NAVA catheter in. Hold on. Bear with me 1 second. Okay. So if we put the NAVA catheter, we plug it in. Let's go step back. So we put the NAVA catheter in, we plugged it in. You are going to see a fourth tracing on your ventilator. That is your EDI tracing. And notice we're still in pressure control. There's a big sigh breath, you can see. So we're going back to neural access. The very top tab is EDI catheter positioning, like we had talked about. Now we have a waveform because we plugged in the catheter. You can see the tracing on the bottom. Each time the patient takes a breath, you'll see blue in the second and third ECG tracings. You'll see, and that is a positive sign that you're in the right spot. If you were to see a blue tracing in the first and second, I always remember, and as you recall when we did the education, up is up, down is down. So if you see blue in the first and second ECG tracing, just pull the EDI catheter back out a little bit, pull it up, and that until you see the tracings in the second and third ECG tracings here, the blue. Now, likewise, if it's on the bottom, you would push it down until you see it on the second and third. Okay, so we have proper placement. Big sigh breath. So we're going to close this out. And notice we're still in pressure control. Now we're going to go back to neural access. Second one is NAVA preview. This is where we're going to set our NAVA level. So when I touch the NAVA level, and as you recall when we were talking, I always tell people to think of NAVA level as pressure support. If I go and I turn the NAVA level up to 2, that would be like turning your pressure support up from 10 to 15. As your NAVA level goes up, the ventilator does more work, the patient does less work. So, and vice versa. If I turn this down, then the patient has to pick up the slack. All right? So if we go in here, and when I adjust this, you'll see this gray tracing. It puts it beside our pressure waveform. Now, we're not at NAVA, we're just placing the NAVA level. What you want to do is make a smooth transition from invasive ventilation or wherever you're at to NAVA, whether it be invasive NAVA or non-invasive NAVA. So let's say 1.5, the gray tracing looks equal to our pressure waveform. You know, the top of my gray is close to the top of my pressure waveform. And so we hit the gray and lock that in. Now when we close this out, we're still in pressure control on this vent. But this is where, notice you can see our yellow pressure tracings, and you can see when the patient wants to take a breath, as opposed to the ventilator giving them a breath. So you could truly see, is the patient synchronous or not? All right. So from here, you're going to press pressure waveform, and we're going to go into our mode options. So here's our mode options. So when I press NAVA, now the 1.5 NAVA level we locked in on the NAVA preview is there. Your PEEP and your FiO2 are going to be the same. Now what we have is a electrical trigger. So you're going to have electrical trigger, and 0.5 is usually adequate. Just know that if my EDI min is 0, the patient triggers a breath, it's going to be that 0.5 microvolts to trigger. If my EDI min, say, is 2, then they have to pull this 0.5 plus the 0.2 to get a breath. So it's no different than the ventilator, but it's an electrical trigger, and that's what to remember. Now, I have it on invasive right now. In non-invasive, you will not see this. You'll just see your backups and your settings over here. This will be gone when you look at your non-invasive. So it's either, NAVA's either on or off. So if I go ahead, and since we want to have patient spontaneously breathing here, and you want your patient spontaneously breathing, patient can't have any medication or anything, or not spontaneously breathing. This is a spontaneously breathing mode. Once I accept this, notice we're in NAVA, right? You'll see the little pink T for trigger. Now every breath is triggered. Flow, as chaotic as it is, that's how the breath wants to be delivered. And remember, with the NAVA, you have a pressure trigger, a flow trigger, now it's electrical trigger, and within the breath, 62 times within a second, it can adjust and give the patient what they want when they want it. And as you'll recall, it gives us more parameters to look at. We see down here our EDI min and our EDI peak. Your EDI min, as you recall, is the tone on the diaphragm, right? Do we have enough PEEP? If you don't, your EDI min typically, say, it's 4 or less is where it should be. If we put a baby on and their EDI min is 6, you kind of let the kid kind of chill out a little bit, you know, let him get comfortable on the vent. If it stays 6, and you'll notice the EDI min, because it's adjusting within the breath, it will be all over the place, as you'll see. But if it stays higher than 4, you may want to increase the PEEP a little bit. If you increase the PEEP a little bit and you see the kid relaxed, then you know the kid needed a little additional CPAP or PEEP at that time. Your EDI min is normal, is 5 to 15 is your normal, okay? Now, shooting for the mid-range of 10, be it 9, 10, 11, 12, somewhere in mid-range. What you don't want is, let's say, and here's an example. Let's say we're on a NAVA level, we put a kid on, we're on a NAVA level of 2.0, right? So we're on a NAVA level of 2, and the kid's been on for a little while, and he's kind of getting used to the vent. This is why I say you kind of wait and see where they chill out at. He kind of realizes, oh, this is great. Now he kind of relaxes. My EDI peak, when we adjusted it to 2, my EDI peaks were 12, 13, 10, 12, in a good range. Now that the kid's relaxed a little bit and everything, now my EDI peak is 5, 6, 4, 5, 6. Going back up. So that's when you want to challenge the kid. So you're going to turn this down. you're going to turn this down to maybe 1.5 and then see what your EDI peak is. It should then, like I said, think of it as pressure support. If I turn that down, now the baby has to do a little more work, right? You're still synchronous with the vent, but you should see your EDI peak more in mid-range of 10, 9, 10, 11, 12, something like that. You don't want it to be 5 or less. It'll keep going to backup all the time.
So your EDI peak should be between 5 and 15?
Your EDI peak normal is between 5 to 15. You're kind of targeting mid-range, because if it constantly, like a micropreemie are really bad for when you put them on, like this is invasive NAVA, right? But you put them on NAVA, you do your preview and say it's 2, and it looks great, and then, a day later you're looking at them and they're just chilling and their EDI peaks are 5, 6, they're very low. Then you would want to kind of challenge them and turn that NAVA level down so that you get, as your EDI peak, more of a 10, something like that. Now, the opposite of that, say I have them on a NAVA level of 1, right? We let the kid chill out a little bit. My EDI peak now is 18, 20, 18, 19, 18, 20. And you're kind of watching the kid and you're like, we need to kind of adjust our NAVA level a little bit. We may want to then increase the NAVA level to where you get more right now until you get more of that mid-range. Or, why did they go up? Our respiratory assessment skills, may need suction, just little things, or if they have fluid retention, or just different things like that. You got to remember, you can see things in real time on this. If they're going to have an issue with something or a reaction from something, you're going to see it in real time. Right?
And so your EDI min, you want it to be 4 or less.
4 or less.
And you'll adjust your PEEP level to get a EDI min of 4 or less.
Right. Yeah. And typically when the PEEP you're on the ventilator usually is adequate. There's only been a couple of times, and actually both times have been on, well,